Ndabaramutse cyane mwiriwe hano muri Amerika ni mwaramutseho mu Bwongereza no ni Kigali ndumva ari mwiriwe banyita Cyusa Ntwari uyu munsi ndaba moderator how to fight genocide denier and list based in the UK diaspora. I'm honored to be joined by diaspora members of the UK, but as well Mr. Muhire based in Rwanda. So with that, I think I'll prefer sharing the microphone with those of based in the UK and also in Rwanda to introduce themselves briefly to our attentive audience. But before I do this, I want to remind you that this is One Nation Radio, your diaspora, Rwandan diaspora radio, always doing its best to give you the news in Rwanda, but as well in the diaspora. And this is a series we've been doing across the globe, approaching different diasporas to give the platform for our people to be able to express themselves on this very, very important topic that is 27 years after the genocide against the Tutsi that took place in 1994 in Rwanda. Where are we? What's the topic of the debate? How are Rwandans in the diaspora fighting, those that are denying? But as well, how is this now permeating, sadly, in the youth as well? Youth that are in the diaspora as well, and then sadly maybe receive an altered facts on Rwanda, and now are sadly disputing some false narrative on Rwanda. So with that, I'll have each of our panelists introduce themselves. I'll start with you, Madam Anais. If you could just in general say who you are, how long you've been calling the UK home, and your involvement in the Rwandan community, and any other fun facts you want people to know that is relevant to this topic today. So thank you. So Madam Anais.
Hi, I'm Anais. I have been in the UK 20 years, so I have lost whatever accent I had before and I just sound British, whatever that means. I am a freelance journalist and I often cover politics, but when that gets a bit too heavy, I also cover entertainment. So I will tell you the latest show to watch on Netflix or the latest cinema movie to check out. I'm probably going to go watch Fast and Furious 9, I know, but still. Fun fact, I am a professional singer as well, love doing that part of things, and I'm very tech savvy and tech heavy and stuff, so I am probably the person that can fix your IT problems. And I'm honored to be here to talk about this very important conversation. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Madam Anais. And if you don't mind as well, when you're answering that, tell us if you were born, where you were in 1994 as well, for the audience to know, So next I'll have, I don't know if Madam Anais, do you want to maybe let us know where you were in 1994? I mean, were you born already or?
Well, I thank you. I appreciate that. It's a very lovely comment. Black don't crack. No, I was 6 years old and we were lucky enough to get out a month before the borders closed. So my family and I survived. Some of my family was thrown in prison and some didn't. But we moved to South Africa a month before everything really took off in 1994.
Thank you. Next, I'll have Mr. Muhire.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm not in the UK. I'm right now talking to you from Rwanda. So where do I start? Let me start with the last question. Where was I when the genocide against the Tutsi started in 1994? I was in Rwanda. We lived near the parliament, and I was old enough. I was 12 years old. So now I'm almost 40. And then what I do in Rwanda, data analyst or made in Rwanda analyst at the Ministry of Trade and Industry. But prior to that, I've been in Rwanda for only 5 years, 6 years actually. Before that, I used to live in Canada, where I used to work in Montreal Police, again as data analyst. And yeah, that's my briefly my life. And today also, I have to say, I'm also a commissioner in the National Unity Reconciliation Commission. I've been there for 4.5 years now. So that's briefly my profile. And again, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to participate in such important discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Niza, please.
Hello, Mwiriwe. My name is Mwiza. I go by the name of Evie Mwiza. So I was born in Kigali. I was born in 99. I'm quite young, I'm still young. I was born in Sehashka. If anyone was born in Sehashka, I moved to the UK, to London, when I was only 1 year old. I grew up here, but I went to school here. I never went back to Rwanda until I was 8, but I always stayed in touch with my roots. My mom would always remind me that I am not from here. So I made it my mission when I was 11 to just learn Kinyarwanda. I would watch interviews and I would actually do my own research on my own culture and my own history. I would listen to my mom and aunts and everyone just talk about my history. And even though I've been far from Rwanda, I've always had my heart there. So I am very, very privileged to be in this discussion right now to bring awareness, raise awareness, and see if we can find some sort of solutions to, what's actually happening on the other side. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll have Joy, please.
Hi, I'm Joy. I'm currently in the UK in Bournemouth. I just came here for my master's last year in September, but before that I was working in Rwanda. I guess I spent more time in the US than in the UK because that's where I did my undergrad. And right after that, I joined when I went back home, I joined the Ministry of Finance, which I've been working for 4 years now, and I'm currently on leave, which means I'm still in the Ministry of Finance. Once I'm done, I'll go back there. So I also worked on the Rwanda Airports Company board for 2.5 years. And well, I was born in 94. I was born in Congo. I wasn't in Rwanda. We came back after the genocide. We were fortunate enough to not be in the country in 94. And fun fact about me, I'm the person who loves dancing, but who doesn't know how to. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your humility and your honesty. We'll have Madam Uwase, please.
Hi guys. I just want to make sure you can all hear me. Yeah, lovely. My name is Mabel. I am an education and early years graduate. I actually graduated last year, despite COVID. We thank God. I've lived in the UK for a couple of years now because I came when I was 8. So I've literally just studied here for most of my life. But I've stayed in touch quite a bit. I've gone back, like Misa said, like I've gone back quite a bit. I have family back home as well, so I always make sure to visit. I'm very passionate about building our community and building our society, so I always make it a point to learn and educate myself about what's going on back home. So I'm very, very honored to be a part of this discussion. So thank you very much.
And you mind telling us where you were in 1994, if you were born?
I wasn't born. I was born in 1999.
Okay, so team Mwiza, I guess. Good. Last but not least, Mr. Kareje.
ndagira mbanze muranyumva. Okay, mwaramutse abandi mwiriwe. Ndi hano muri Texas. Nabaye mu Rwanda, nagize jenoside iba ntagize amahirwe, ntabwo ndi mu Rwanda. Maze imyaka igera ku 8 muri Texas. nanjye rero nishimiye kubana namwe no gutanga umusanzu mu kurwanya ingengabitekerezo ya jenoside. Murakoze.
Okay, so thank you all of you for introducing yourself. Mwakoze mwese. As you know, we have barely an hour or so, so I want to start by saying, obviously, we're not going to be able to cover everything in a symbolic hour. Just want to make sure we intrigue our audience, we direct them towards trustworthy, sources, and somewhat maybe equip them with some tools, share some tips. But yeah, we'll try to do our best. But I want to always make sure people know there's no way we can cover in an hour such an important topic. I'll start with it's the 27th commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. We're a couple of days, a week-ish before Umusi Yokuyoza, the day in 1994 the RPF took Kigali, marking the liberation of Rwanda, the halt to the genocide. I was thinking, usually in your respective communities, if you can start by telling us from a youth perspective, what does July 4th means to you? How have you been able to celebrate this, but as well really to reflect from the youth perspective, because you always want to remember those that liberated Rwanda, the RPF, a lot of them were, I could label them as the youth. A lot of them paid the ultimate sacrifice. So I was thinking, I'll start with this question, just what does Liberation Day means to you? And in the UK, usually in your respective communities, how do you celebrate Liberation Day? I'll start with, I think we start with Anais. So Anais, please, Madam Anais.
So I actually got involved a bit later in life with the Rwandan community because I didn't come across a lot of them. I knew a lot more of Rwandans in Belgium, and they all seemed to know each other, but that didn't seem to be a thing or as much or as prevalent in the UK. And so part of my recent commitments with various people was I was the deputy chairman for Rwanda Youth UK. And we would try to come together for various events, sometimes just social, to meet and actually get to know each other. And that's what's been really, really cool. So that's actually where I met Evie. So there's a few different people that we've connected through that way. And that's where we would come together for events like Liberation Day, for different, often the High Commission would host an event and then we would be able to attend, so they would then inform us so we could obviously come, but for at least for me personally, I can't speak for the whole community, but for me personally, it's an opportunity to remember where we came from. I always say that Rwanda is so much more than our genocide. We existed before the genocide, we'll exist after it, but it's an opportunity to still remember so that we don't repeat that, and to also just, I guess, recall the resilience that we had, because essentially the world turned its back on us and we had to tackle it ourselves. We had to figure it out ourselves among our people, and we did. So I think that's a cause for celebration, to remember how far we've come and that it did end, and that we didn't allow colonialism and different things that played into leading to the genocide in the first place to overcome us. And that's what it means for me.
Thank you. I'd like to hear Ms. Muniza and Ms. Uwase as well comment on that, because it's always also interesting to hear from those that were born way after but had to learn from narrative they heard from their elders. So between Ms. Muniza and Ms. Uwase, if you may comment, thank you.
So July the 4th means a lot to me. I, especially because of who my parents are. My father made it very clear in every single conversation that we had that, it was a struggle because he was part of the RPF that liberated the country. And I'm very proud to be a product of that. So just hearing his stories, hearing what they had to go through, really inspires me in everything that I do, every aspect of my life. You know, especially my mom, who is a survivor among all of her siblings, hearing them speak and tell their testimonies in, you know, events such as the commemoration. You know, growing up listening to all of that, it really opened my eyes and opened my brain to what really happened. So for me, when I see deniers denying that, it triggers me, and it triggers all the emotions that I've grown up seeing. And so July the 4th, it's definitely a celebration for me and my family. You know, also just I study politics and international relations at university. So even just hearing just how the Western perceive the genocide against the Tutsi, it's really wild, especially when I'm the person of a product of that, and seeing how they view it and how they teach it in a Western country like this. It really inspires me to come out here and come on this panel, and even if it means just going on social media and just doing the little that I can to tell the truth, fight the deniers, or fight anybody that denies or opposes to what really happened, because the struggle is something that we must all remember. It is the reason why we are here, and it's the reason why we can call Rwanda our home. So that's what July the 4th means to me.
Thank you, Ms. Wase, please.
Similarly to Evie, I think my family and the small community around me has made such a huge impact in how I perceive the history of Rwanda. Even though like I was so young, I remember when I was in Rwanda during this whole period of time, I would be like, it wasn't exactly trauma, but it was just I would feel it in my own body. Like I'd feel the sadness in the streets. I'd feel the heaviness in the atmosphere. You know, it was such like it was so tangible to the point where even as a child, I remember waking up having nightmares. Even though obviously I wasn't there, but I used to have nightmares from the things that would be on the news and the discussions I'd have with my parents and the stories that I would hear. So even though I wasn't around at the time, it was so real for me. Till this day, it feels so real. Like it just feels almost like a dream that I dreamt, but it feels very real. So through stories and testimonies, I've had the truth come from my grandfather, my grandmother, my mother, my father, the aunties around me, the uncles, survivors, and I've been honestly, I'm very grateful for that, because I do recognize that some possibly some of the deniers may be just in a community where there is no one to tell them the truth, and that's what they're lacking. So I'm very grateful to have had the community that I did around me, who like opened my eyes and told me the truth and told me the reality of what it was, and gave me the tools that I needed to have in order to do more research into it myself as well. So for me, um, this all means just having a sense of pride in our country and our people, about the work that we put in, about the resilience. Honestly, like we've said before, the resilience is just amazing. I don't know how else to put it. It's amazing because of the things that we've been through, and to see where we are today and to see what we're working towards, the fact that we're able to open up platforms like this and talk about things in order for us to grow and learn is just amazing. So yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I was curious as well to hear from Mr. Muhire, since from the Kigali perspective and with your role, what would you say, how is the youth approaching it from a reflection perspective, July 4th? Because I know you have different roles when you get to be exposed to the youth and engage. What's the pulse on the ground?
Sure. Maybe allow me also to start with my personal view of what this day represent for me personally. I won't say, fortunately, I was born before that moment from 90 to 94, where the genocide against the Tutsi happened. But I was born, and for me, that day, it's the true Independence Day of Rwanda. It's really the day where Rwandan decided to get rid of the colonialism, other kind of perceptions that for a while, almost 100 years, because if you know, the colonial entered Rwanda almost 100 years ago, if you start counting from 1994. So for me, it's the true Independence Day, and of course, being a liberation day, where one, as I say, Rwandans decided to really definitely make an end to the worst period of the country. But secondly, and which also include the perspective what's happening in Rwanda, from the role I have at the commission, at the National Unity Reconciliation Commission, as a commissioner in charge of the youth, what we've seen around is younger people really have have gotten the ownership of this day, of the 4th of July. We have a lot of activity that goes on around, a lot of webinar, a lot of Zoom meetings where young people of 21, 22, 23 do talk about that day, what's happening. If you go on Twitter, definitely you start seeing a lot of preparation going on. And what's very important to see is Rwanda, that day, 4th of July, for them, most of them say is the day we got rid of ethnic links, where we use to see each other into whatever Belgium had decided to define Rwandans as. And you can feel it in the youth in Rwanda, where sometimes it's not the case. I don't know how in the UK is. I've never been to the UK, but I've been to so many other countries. Recently, I was even in the Netherlands. You can see the progress that has been made in Rwanda in terms of liberating ourselves, not only of ethnic politics, but at the same time, having this mindset of focusing on what's matter than anything else. It's really in Rwanda, and sometimes when diaspora, it's not there yet. So there's a lot of friction going on in Rwanda amongst the youth, and we would like to see actually from the National Unity Reconciliation Commission to see the same dynamic happening in the diaspora. So I will end with another personal perspective, or how do I see this 4th of July? For someone who was old enough to see what was happening before the liberation of Rwanda, I can tell definitely for me, it's kind of reborn, to being born again, not the Christian style, but sometimes I do tell people I don't want to just reduce my age, but I start counting that I felt alive starting from 94, because that's where finally, where when I was in Canada, I can see Rwanda finally from 94 start gaining this dignity that is represented in any country that wants to be a developed nation. So for me, the 4th of July is the true and real Independence Day for Rwandan. And secondly, I'm very happy to say that the youth in Rwanda has really understand the value of this day, and they are really making sure that their peers in diaspora would love us to be part of the same journey in terms of reconciliation, but also focusing on what matter the most. So that would be my long explanation of my 4th of July, but also for my observation as a commissioner in the National Unity Reconciliation Commission in charge of the youth.
Thank you. Miss Joy, I was wondering, it's interesting that you said you recently came to the UK for the Masters. Can you as well compare, because you have kind of fresh ideas from how 4th of July meant to you being in Kigali, and now you're in the UK. How do you see your peers in the UK navigating this compared to your peers in Rwanda, how they navigated it? If you mind sharing with us, thank you.
Sure. I'm completely in a different environment where I'm mostly surrounded by non-Rwandans, which means most of them don't even know our history. So, of course, me as a person, July 4th means a lot. It's a reminder of the sacrifices made by our parents, by our elders, to give us a peaceful and united home. And that's something we shouldn't take for granted, definitely. But that's something I would say maybe back home in Kigali with my friends and family, that's something we understood, but that's not something that is understood here. So what I'm trying to do currently here, I try to spread our history in such events, which I think I will do soon on July 4th. Like most of my friends, actually, most of my friends that I'm with here, they're not Rwandans. So I try to use it as an opportunity to tell the history from a Rwandan perspective, not the rumors people have been hearing, and to finally tell the truth for them to not just be led by the sometimes the unrealistic stories they hear. So yeah, that's how I look at it.
Thank you. So, Mr. Kareji, I was wondering, in Dallas, we know there's a big Rwandan community. Any tips or any ways you think the youth celebrates or reflects around July 4th that the UK maybe could see as a useful tool or a useful way of doing it? Because I know there's a big community in Dallas of Rwandans. How usually does the youth interact with this very special day of ours?
Mbanze nyemereye mbere nanjye mbanze gusangiza uburyo itariki ya 4 z'ukwezi kwa karindwi kuri njyewe Muhire yabivuze numva ni nkaho yavugaga ibyo numva nari mfite nanjye ni nk'umunsi w'ivuko ku Banyarwanda, kuba Abanyarwanda bafite ibice bitandukanye, amoko uko bayitaga twese turabizi, bagatandukanya Abanyarwanda ntibagire kwishira kwizana, ariko uriya munsi n'umunsi na kwita wizuka kandi none wivuka ku Banyarwanda twese, noneho kuvuka uri urubyiruko ugasanga uri mu gihugu muvuga ururimi rumwe, ntacyo wikanga, uva mu ntara ujya mu yindi, nta cyangombwa waka, ni byiza. Ku byerekeye icyo mbajije Dallas, uburyo urubyiruko dufatanya kuri uriya munsi, ni umunsi twese hano twizihiza. Urubyiruko dufite nuze duhuriramo, ama platform duhuriramo, dufite amagroupe ya WhatsApp duhuriramo, tugira imikino kuri uriya munsi. Tugira imikino tugahuza ari abakuru, ari abatarengeje imyaka 35. Muri icyo gihe hatanga ibiganiro, Embasikazi kadufasha, dukatanga ama experience, hari abahoze ku rugamba hano bakaduha uko byari bimeze. Noneho hari igihe tugeze kugira amahirwe haza n'abaduha ubuhamya bw'aho igihugu aho igihugu cyavuye naho kigeze. So tugira amahirwe yo kubona buri gihe ibiganiro biduhoza nkaho turi mu Rwanda. Ntibibuza ko hariho abapfobya cyangwa abashaka gusubiza urubyiruko mu curaburindi, ariko buri gihe tugira amahirwe ko tubona abatugira inama tuba hafi. Navuga ko community buri gihe akenshi urubyiruko dufite imiryango, tugira amahirwe kugira imiryango ugera ku 1120 ngaho y'Abanyarwanda. So ababyeyi bagira inama abana babo, tugira aho duhurira, ubu dusigaye dufite n'itorero rya Kinyarwanda. So umuco rero nyarwanda ukomeza kuba hafi, tukabasha kwiga amateka yacu, abatabasha no kumenya tugerageza kubasharinga ama experience agibera handi, uko mu Rwanda bimeze. So numva aricyo nasangiza aba muri Europe gutegura iyo mikino, usibye ko nabonye babiturusha basigaye bagize, ni nkaho natwe turanganye. Urebye u Rwanda rusigaye turi hose turanganye, nabonye bategura ari kwibuka kugira iki, turi kumwe. Numva cyo nabasangiza.
Arakoze Karege kudusangiza uburyo muri Dallas babikora. I'll be coming back to a lot of you actually mention on how they see a different narrative because of being in a Western country. They hear as well of a different narrative from media, from different sources. I was wondering how do you navigate when a non-Rwandan approaches you with that alternative facts? How can you share with us maybe an anecdote? And I'm opening it to the floor because it's quite an open-ended question. How do you navigate being approached by a non-Rwandan and they have an alternative fact and they might think right now they know the truth? How do you take this opportunity to educate, or how do you as well take this opportunity to show them where they should actually seek factual narrative and factual data on what happened in Rwanda, what is happening in Rwanda, and what we want the way forward to be for Rwanda? If anyone want to share an anecdote. I see Mr. Muhire, you have your hand up.
Yes. One of the anecdotes I use is often when they come and they say, for instance, oh, in Rwanda, we heard a prisoner had been killed because he tried to flee away, and they make a huge story about that. And the first thing I do, I remind them, I used to work in Montreal Police, and I will ask them how many people are being killed by the same law enforcement in Canada on a monthly basis. And then they go on Google or whatever, they search it, and they realize actually they may have like 10 or even more people being killed in Canada on a monthly basis by law enforcement, sometimes often accidentally. And then in Rwanda, maybe we may have just one guy who tried to flee and then unfortunately is being shot. So, and then I always tell them, why don't you see any article about how Canada may be and so democratic and so whatever they say about us whenever such incident, unfortunate incident happen. And from that comparisons, it's always an interest door for me to tell them, you shouldn't just see Africa / Rwanda as a barbarian country, whatever, even a such incident that may happen elsewhere, it becomes a way to say, you see these people, they can't even manage themselves. So I always use a comparison between us as Africans / the continent / Rwanda and them as Western world so-called developed. And just to tell them whatever is happening in Rwanda is also happening elsewhere, and the narrative does not change when it happens to their country. So for me, whenever they try to portray whatever, I always try to find a situation happening in Rwanda, comparing them to what's happening there. For instance, also can go with when people say the COVID situation, for instance. If today Rwanda is the only country on a safe list, for example, for the Netherlands, compared to United States that were not on the list. I don't know if now they update the list, but when I went there, if you had an American passport, you had to isolate yourself. And when you come with the Rwandan passport, you didn't even have to pass any tests there when you arrive. You just landed as a normal situation. Then you go to whatever agenda you have. So I showed them that, hey, this shows you that Rwanda also can do better things than the Western world. And for me, from those such game of comparing what's happening in both countries, often it opens me the door to now have their attention and explain the journey we had to go through. Our friends from Dallas, I think, or Texas, I don't remember exactly, have mentioned how back then when you used to travel in the country, you needed to have a visa from a province to another one, but today we don't have it. But before I jump right away to that kind of explanation that they may not understand, I always take time definitely to show that we can do better in some situation, but also in some situation you're even actually not even worse than them. So that's the anecdote I can use just to show you whenever I encounter such a aggressive narrative on Rwanda.
For me, it's similar. So not just because I'm a journalist, but I'm a huge proponent of context. I feel like things like racism, ignorance, all that stuff, it stems from a lack of knowledge. So it may not be intentional, But I'm always saying your intention is really irrelevant because your impact is this. So if your impact is that you stabbed me, let's maybe deal with the fact that I'm bleeding before we discuss why you were carrying the knife in the first place. And too many people hide behind, oh, I didn't mean to. And some of that is because you didn't know. If we didn't learn stuff in school, why would you? So it would be unfair to expect that knowledge to automatically be there. Then, of course, it's covered in this whole viewpoint of Africa as a whole. So first, let's start there. So I think there's a phrase that I heard once, and it stuck with me ever since, that Africa is not underdeveloped, it's overexploited. And so as long as people think that we are somehow struggling all the time, without realizing the part that they are playing in plundering the continent, that's the first part I have to fight, that part, and try to say things like, did you know if Congo were to be wiped off the map, we wouldn't have our latest technology? Did you know 80% of the world's chocolate comes from West Africa? So again, without that, you wouldn't have your Cadbury's or your Nestle and all that kind of stuff. And so often that shakes a lot of people up. So that's where I come from. I always add context. And the first thing I ever have to come against, especially for Rwanda, is the ridiculous number of 800,000. I don't know why the global media have decided this is our number. Stresses me out. I said, where did you get this number, please? Because according to Rwanda's National Commission for the Fight Against the Genocide, last year, that number was at 1,070,014. And that has changed because they found more bodies in a church recently as 2 weeks ago. So I actually don't understand where they get this number, but it's a global media, this is the number. So why? Where did you pick this number from? So that's where I tackle that. And then I also then try to combat the pity, because the first thing you get if you say you're from Rwanda, oh, that's the place where 27 years ago. Let me tell you the ways that this has changed. Did you know that we're the only country in the entire world that have banned plastic since 2008? Do you know we're the cleanest African country? All that kind of stuff. And so I try to show the positive side, but I also try to provide the context that they're often missing, like the fact that the genocide didn't happen overnight. It started like in the 60s, like the fact that, the root of it was colonialism and all the different things that triggered the different processes that then led to 1994. Like I read somewhere when I wrote an article for The Independent, I was really honored that they asked me to actually provide correct context. And one number that I came across was really a shock to me. I said, so this is not something that happened overnight. It was something like in 1994, or between 1993 and 1994, so before the genocide, 580 tons of machetes were imported into Rwanda. So before. So where did that come from? Who provided that? How did that start? And so that's where I tend to start, because I love history and I love providing context. And unfortunately, we are coming up against people speaking on our behalf as if we don't have voices, as if we're dumb, as if there's no universities on the African continent. Because I know recently, I haven't shared the story yet, maybe I might, but I know for a really big organization, a media conglomerate, they invited me to speak about Rwanda and then replaced me with a white woman who they decided was a Rwandan expert. I said, how? I am actually Rwandan. I was there recently. I survived the genocide. Why is this white woman, the expert? And so they actually went ahead with her instead of me and another historian who actually knows about Rwanda. So that's the kind of things we're coming up against. And so long as there are other voices speaking on behalf of Rwanda, we will continue to have this misinformation and the lack of context and stuff. So, yeah.
Thank you. I'll have maybe either Miss Wase or Miss Niza add the comment, and then we'll move to the next question. I always want to make sure those born after as well, how they lived it, because one thing to keep in mind, and thank you for sharing earlier, Miss Wase. We talk about obviously people that went through it. These are the first exposed, but there's also generational trauma, something you inherited from your, the village that shaped you into the women or the men that you are today. But this is very serious. So know that, again, even if you're born after, your voice matters, because you're a product of this chronology of events, but also you're a product of the environment you grew up in. And as you know, in Rwanda, every April, like you said, the atmosphere changes. The whole nation is mourning our beloved ones that were killed and slaughtered in 1994. So yeah, I always want to value the voice of those as well born after. So I don't know if Miss Miza or Miss Wese, you want to add something before we move to the next question?
Honestly, I feel like I'm quite privileged in the sense that I haven't really dealt with anything face to face. But I think recently, especially this year during quarantine, the social media was just wilding. Like there was so much denialism going on. It was like it came out of nowhere because I feel like it has been going on in previous years, but the platform it was given this year and last year was just absolutely just insane. And the thing that I was actually very proud to see was a lot of Rwandan youth participating in spreading the right information and taking it up for themselves to actually call out misinformation and say this is wrong, this is not right. And it's honestly, it's crazy to see that people as young as we are still are carrying on this generational misinformation. So one thing that I do believe is it's kind of like indoctrination, because the same way we've learned from our parents what is right and what the truth is, they've probably heard these misinformed stories from their families too and their communities as well. So they come onto social media platforms and speak upon things that are just completely misinformed and just wrong, and people take their word for what it is. And it was interesting to actually see that people were believing them, but it was also like a great example of how the Rwandan youth, the Rwandan diaspora in the UK are very ahead of their time, in the sense that they're working hard to actually educate themselves and educate others. Like, for example, people were posting different facts about the genocide and what really happened. People were posting like anecdotal things. People were posting stories. People were posting testimonies. There were also like pages completely committed to the education about what happened in the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. For example, I think, if you help me out here, I think one is called there's one that's very like prevalent that a lot of people, it has a podcast as well actually.
Oh, Amateka?
Yes, Amateka series. Yeah. That one was really good. I found that one really helpful because it literally covered things as if it was like a history lesson. And I think
they also translate in different languages, so yes. English, French, and Kinyarwanda.
Yeah,
there's no excuse.
Literally,
yeah.
It really was like, if you have any doubt, if you have any questions, you can go to sources such as these. So I think that for me was very helpful, because sometimes I honestly don't even have the words to combat the denialism on a platform like social media. So it was very helpful to have just plain facts, so that you can combat these ideologies with, here are the facts, fight with yourself, but at least you know that these are the facts.
Yeah, I'd also just want to add something. I feel, adding on to Mabel's, I feel like for people like us who were born after 1994, who have parents and who are in communities that tell us the truth and actually take us to the commemoration, Kwibuka, Liberation Day, just to open our eyes and our minds to what really happened, and force us to actually listen to testimonies, even though they are sad to listen to. Just being able to listen to these testimonies, it really opens our minds. And you know, during this quarantine, I think because a lot of people were at home, they had a lot of time on social media to release really incorrect information. And you know, it's hard because a lot of these platforms actually are, you know, they're followed by so many Rwandans and so many non-Rwandans around the world. They have thousands of followers. So I find it very detrimental to our history, to our culture, to our people, the Rwandan people, when platforms like that release incorrect information when the correct information is literally in your face. So, I feel like, we're at a stage now where it's hard, like Mabel said, because the way we are taught the truth, other communities are taught the wrong things, due to maybe guilt or just what Western media tells them and shows them. So I think our role is just, sometimes it'll get tiring because some people would just be like, no, this is not the case, but all we can do is really just, like Anais, like all we can do is just give them the facts, tell them what really happened, and give them all these reliable sources. Like Amateka series, I just want to shout them out. They do such a good job in giving correct information, and in a way where, and anybody and everybody around the world can listen and hear the facts, and it's translated in 3 different languages. It's really not hard. So we're just at a stage now where we have to do whatever we can using social media, using our peers, word of mouth, just to get the right information out there, so that the genocide against the Tutsi or any genocide doesn't happen again.
Maybe I can add just a small one on what just Muiza just said. As Kusa asked, like, what do we hear from the people we meet here, their perspective on Rwanda, about our history, about our culture, everything in general. So most of the times I would say that not only they have a misconception of our history, but they also think that when you're here to stay, because you're either not happy back home or you prefer their culture better or the lifestyle here better. So it's funny, but that's what I faced in the US, and I'm still facing the same thing here. So I find myself just trying to explain to them what is Rwanda today, because most of the times Rwanda is painted a very unrealistic picture of what it is, and try to show them that, try to inform them and to show them the right sources to go to if they really want to educate themselves about Rwanda. Not only Rwanda, in Africa, Africa in general. So basically, I just try to explain how Rwanda, the current Rwanda today, not the only 94. Sometimes it's as if they talk as if we never moved from 94, as if nothing was done since 94. So let us say I just try to give them updated information, since they I don't know why, but they're often given the outdated information. So, and I also try to show them that we also have a culture, a tradition that we're happy and proud to have. We're not here to take their culture, their tradition, to forget who we are, and also try to give them a picture of the true history. Even though, yes, blood was shed in 94, even though we have a sad past, I try to also explain that that doesn't determine or define who we are today. So basically, I just try to explain from a Rwandan point of view, and not from what Africa or Rwanda is portrayed to be sometimes by non-African most of the times. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's a perfect segue as well. I love what you said about non-Africans or non-Rwandans. Earlier, Ms. Anais shared on how, sadly, there was a global platform or a global potential conference happening, and she's replaced by a quote-unquote Rwandan expert who perhaps maybe even hasn't been to Rwanda, or has been there 2 weeks, talked to a couple of people, and now they know Rwanda, to an expertise level. But I wanted, again, opening it to the floor here, how do you, and maybe to share to the youth and to the Rwandan community listening, how do we navigate oftentimes other voices speaking on our behalf, wearing a hat of expert? And you know that sadly, over the last couple years, there's been a couple books even published by authors that are, again, so-called experts on the Rwandan history, on the Tutsi genocide. And because again, you know, Martin Luther King used to say that there was a minority of people against civil rights movement. There was a minority of people that were allies, but there was a vast majority of just bystanders, just like not knowing where to go. And when I think of us here trying to share the factual narrative of what happened in Rwanda and what is happening, then there's another faction saying other stuff, but there's a vast majority of just people not sure who they should listen to. They're leaning towards whomever is the closest maybe to them. So what do you think, how, again, maybe on your personal account or on maybe techniques, methods that have worked, how do you counter books being published, shows, documentaries? I mean, the list goes on of ways people have brought an alternative narrative on what's currently happening in Rwanda. But what are some of the methods? I am always anxious to learn from other communities to know. And as you know, some of these authors are from the UK. They are from the UK. And for Mr. Karegi and myself being based in the US and the UK were the two countries that didn't really officially, with the official terms that even the US has, the UN, excuse me, has approved of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. So I was just wondering if you can share with us methods, techniques on how to counter all these efforts of people trying to deny, rewrite history, and again, all of this with the premises of we know better, we're experts, we're going to tell you how what happened in your country. And also with what Miss Anais said earlier regarding the number, I've oftentimes all my life living in diaspora, I've been, you know, having to wrestle with this number because I think some other genocides such as the Holocaust, it was 1 million, 6 million, excuse me, I'm thinking again about in Rwanda, it was 6 million, and you don't, you know, oh, 5 million and 900, it's 6 million, it's a round number. I'm pretty sure it was a bit more, but they selected a number just to make it. Us is the same, we said 1 million, even though it's more, but it's 1 million. Yes, you see all the time, I think this is also a way of revisionist subtle techniques is to throw other numbers. And so people, again, those bystanders become confused of what's the official quote unquote number. So with that, I want to turn it back to you again. Methods, techniques, how do we counter this campaign that is happening over books, shows even on Netflix? I mean, you name it, it's I call it a campaign because it's at many fronts that Rwanda's history is trying to be rewritten. So what are some of the techniques and methods you can share with our audience on how to combat that? Maybe I'll start with, let me see who spoke last, who started. Yeah, maybe Miss Anais.
Yeah, so it's really hard actually, because these are massive platforms where, for example, I will name them. I don't really want to direct attention to them, but Judy River recently spoke at Cambridge University. I mean, you couldn't get bigger than that. And we wrote letters, we came against it. We said you can't platform her without a counter option. You know, we're not out here trying to get the other side, whatever side they want to represent, to never speak. Freedom of speech, after all. But there should always be a balance. And what I'm finding is that there isn't a balance. So I think of the two things I'd recommend, even though there's probably not one solution, one, unity. So all the pockets of voices that are saying the same thing, maybe if we came together in numbers, that would probably work. I'm sure all of us have connections in different places. So like Amateka with the podcast, that would be an amazing way so that more of us come together, get to know each other, and then have a massive or a bigger platform to share that information. So unity would probably be the biggest thing, I think, instead of having just pockets of voices in different parts of the UK. Maybe that we should all come together. But the other thing as well is just this focus on getting the right information. I think what's really hard, first of all, I don't even understand what the fixation is. Why are you so bothered about Rwanda? You weren't bothered when, all this murdering was happening. You didn't help us. So why is it your business that you're now coming to tell us what our history is? So that's the bit I don't understand. I don't understand what the fixation is on Rwanda. It's a little bit problematic. It's a lot problematic, let's be honest, where they've decided that they are going to tell us our history. So that's still remnants of colonialism. I know this is a bit controversial, but personally, I feel like the Commonwealth is just colonialism by a nicer name. So we're just maintaining these structures, we're maintaining these situations where we don't get to share our stories, we don't get to talk about the true context behind it. So I think we should just speak about it more, talk about it more on social media, use those platforms, come together as groups, share more information, but try to do it so it's factual, and then have reliable sources, because it's really, really hard. Because if you're going to hear that, Michaela Wrong has written a book, and it came out, her timing of when she released this book is actually really insulting. If she's supposed to be a person who's aware about the history of Rwanda, why on earth would you publish a book like that during Kwibuka? Why not? You could have released it later. You didn't have to release it during Kwibuka as a sign of respect. So in that sort of scenario, she got platformed everywhere, right? So a lot of people wrote about the book, a lot of people wrote reviews, but not a lot of Rwandans could write reviews. So we weren't able to share the true context or combat it. And as long as we're not combating it, as long as we're not balancing with the correct information, we're still going to have voices that are just continue to be louder than us. And I think we just need to get louder, because it's really, really, really frustrating to keep having conversations like what Joy mentioned. I always get that all the time. You're in England because, no, I'm here because X, Y, and Z. And recently I went back to Rwanda, so I even used something as simple as travel. So for the 6 weeks that I was there, I created a hashtag called Go with Anais, and I took everybody with me to all the different parts of Rwanda. I explained certain things that people didn't know about. I showed them. So sometimes just show them, physically show them. There are ways to tell people about it where they can use, because a lot of people obviously want to use their eyes as evidence, so it's fine. Here's proof. Here's a book. Here's a podcast. Here's a platform where 15 of us, 100 of us, 200 of us are coming together to talk about the actual history, the actual context. Here's a historian who's actually teaching about it. Read their book and all that stuff. Because I don't think only Rwandans can talk about Rwanda. That would be a bit myopic. But I think it should be that it's our story, our narrative, our focus. And unfortunately, that keeps changing because they've decided that other people are more expert than we are.
I'd just like to touch up on what Anais has just said about colonialism. I think one narrative that we really need to combat, not just as Rwandans, but as Africans in general, is the narrative that the white man or the Western world is always right. And I think that's really what has fueled the fire of this continual denialism, because we continue to seek knowledge about ourselves from another, which really just does not make sense, like in any way, shape, or form. Even on the most basic level, within, let's say, for example, within a relationship, you don't go outside to seek wisdom about that relationship, you seek it from within. So it really just, I think we really need to reiterate this sense of we are capable of solving our own problems. We are capable of learning and growing from our own history. We are capable of talking to each other and learning from each other. Obviously, like Anais said, it's okay for others to contribute to this growth, and it's okay for us to learn and hear out other opinions and maybe even disagree, but learn and grow from that. But it is not okay to let the people who lead this discussion, who are the ones that are encouraging the conversation be of somewhere else, of someone else. It just doesn't make sense. And I think for us to fully understand it, we need to constantly remind ourselves that we are capable as Africans, as Rwandans, of doing the work ourselves, of evolving and growing and doing, the research that the white people are doing for us. It really doesn't add up. And I think if we continue to invest in ourselves and to encourage each other to do this work, we will get to a point where we're combating them and they see that actually, you know what, they're capable. And we are, that's the thing. But it's just whiteness in itself as a concept is, so problematic that it has just overwhelmed a lot of communities, overwhelmed a lot of us, to the point where we really don't know where to start from anymore, especially with colonialism and its remnants. It's so deep, the roots are so deep within us that we can't just leave it all behind us, But yeah, that's just a point that I wanted to put out there.
Thank you, Ms. Wase. Thank you, Ms. Anais. As you know, when we go in such a passionate debates and conversation that hits home, touches our heart, our existence, time goes fast. We're almost around the hour here, so I wanted to make sure as we enter the concluding remarks, I want to go around one last time and you just share a message you want to give to the youth, a message of hope, a message as well, a call to action perhaps, on how do you think, what's the way forward as we're getting ready to celebrate Umunsi w'Intsinzi Kwibohoza on July 4th in a couple of days here. What's the message here for the youth? What's that message of hope? But as well, what's I always say call to action, because we don't want just to words and words and words. What's also action? Well, what should we do? Like some of us feel powerless. I'm just a person. I'm here in the US. I'm in Manchester. I'm in London. Like, what can I do? I'm one, fish in this big ocean that social media is. But what do you think we can do? With that, I'll start maybe closer to home and then end up in the UK. Mr. Kareje, if you want to give a kind of concluding remarks, murakoze.
Murakoze. Reka mbanze sure ku hantu bari bavuze nabwo nabonye umwanya kwavugaho methode twakoresha cyangwa se aba bantu bandika ibitabo bashaka gutanga ukuri kandi ukuri kuva kuri twebwe. Mu by'ukuri ibyo bakora barabizi, ntabwo babiyobeye ko batangaza ibinyoma. Urugero nka Judy Rivers hano muri Texas, yaradutunguye ariko byaduhaye gufunguka amaso. Ingamba twafashe nka Dallas, Texas, nuko twebwe tugiye noneho gutanga kugera mu mashuri mbere yuko bahagera, kuko baza gutanga ubutumwa bubi, twe tukagenda tujya kubunyomoza, mu by'ukuri batakwiye kuhagera. So Dallas, community ya Dallas, abayobozi bishize hamwe bagira ngo barebe uko zajya bajya muri ayo mashuri mbere yuko bari abantu bahagera, bababwiza n'ukuri n'abari bo, kuko ntabwo dutangira amateka twe nitwe tuyazi, kandi mu by'ukuri bafite inyungu. Biriya babikora babizi nta nubwo bazahagarara. Rero icyo nasaba urubyiruko nuko tugomba kuba mbere na mbere kuba proud y'igihugu cyacu. Noneho iyo ubaye proud y'igihugu cyawe nta gukunda ukivuga nabi, nta no gukunda ucyangiza. Urubyiruko ruranga twese dufite ama social media za Instagram zaki, njya mbona abajya live just kugira ngo babyine, abajya live just kugira ngo bagaragaze ibindi, kugira ngo bagere nimero nyinshi, abajya live bakavuga ibintu biteye ubwoba bindi. N'ubu ngubu umuntu akajya live tukerekana biriya. Akandi kantu gatoya, gusharinga ama social media yacu, ugasharinga ibintu byinshi. Reba nk'ejo bundi President Macron yaje mu Rwanda, yarazanye iki? Yaje gusaba imbabazi, azanye n'igitabo kigaragaza uruhare Ubufaransa rwagizemo. Aze urubyiruko gusharinga biriya tukabigereka abandi, kuko uru rubyiruko ruri hano rwinshi bayobya, ntago rubonera amateka. Kumva we yajya mu rugo umubyeyi we cyangwa se na nyina bakamubwira ati bariya ni leta y'ibindi y'ubwoko runaka cyangwa se iki, ariko abonye amahanga yagiye gusaba imbabazi kubera uruhare yagizemo, niyo histoire, ntago azumva ibyo ababyeyi bamubwira kuko ababyeyi baramushuka. Ariko nabona n'uburyo amahanga UN yemeye yuko yitwa jenoside yakorewe abatutsi, byose tukabisharinga n'urubyiruko tukabereka, kuko urubyiruko rumwe rurarohwa mu mateka mabi y'ababyeyi babo bishizemo. Kuko turebye jenoside, etape ya nyuma yayo ni ukuyihakana, kuyipfobya. So bari kuri etape ya nyuma, barabona basa nkaho bananiwe, barashaka kwihekesha abana babo ndetse banabayobya. Icyo rero nicyo kintu dukwiye kwereka urubyiruko, tukabereka yuko bari kuri etape ya nyuma. Ibi ngibi byarakozwe, byemewe n'amahanga, nimurebe, tukabaha fact nyinshi, ibi byose biri kuba tukabibereka, tugasharinga ama video. Niyo utasharinga wenda nk'ikiganiro nk'iki, ariko sharinga kuriya makuru agiye gusaba imbabazi n'iki byose, sharinga ibyo UN yemeye, bifungura amaso bariya n'urubyiruko bagenzi bacu barize, barareba bakamenya ukuri. So nuko ba facts. Rero message naho urubyiruko rugenzi rwanjye gukunda igihugu, ukunda igihugu, ugishaka isura nziza, ukivuganira uko kiri, ibibamo byose ukabivugisha ukuri. Dufite aho twavuye, dufite naho tugeze. Kiriya gihugu mu myaka 27 naho kigeze, urebye naho cyavuye, kirivuganira ubwacyo. Kandi urubyiruko nibajya kubaza, jyumva ati genda basi wirebere unagaruke, genda wirebere. Njya nkunda ukuntu embassy zikavuga ati mubabwire tuzabishinganira, bagende bajyeyo barebe uko igihugu kimeze, turabishinganishe, bagende bazagaruka. So u Rwanda rwafunguye amarembo. Nanone reba mbere ya 94 bavuga ko u Rwanda ari ikirahuri cyuzuye, nta munyarwanda abona haje. Ariko ubu ngubu abanyarwanda barahamagara umunyarwanda buri wese ahari kuza kugana mu gihugu cye, kuza gataha akagira iki. Rero abantu bapfobya ntibadutesha umwanya, barabizi ibyo barimo, ahubwo twebwe turebe inzira bacamo, tuzifunge, tubabwize ukuri. Ayo mashuri bajyamo natwe turayemereye kuyajyamo, tugira ibiganiro mu makominota yacu aho turi, mu gihe cyo kwibuka kominota, kugira ngo twibukire ari kominota twenyine, tujye mu mashuri runaka yaho dutuye mu gace, aho dukora ibyo biganiro, dutumira abaprofeseri, dutumira bose, dukomange kwa meya, tubwire ibinyamakuru amateleviziyo yaho dutuye, byageze kujya aho bajya nabo, kuko nabo uko bahajyana kuko twahajya. Ndumva ariko kanasoroza. Murakoze.
Arakoze Karege. I'll go to Kigali, and then so we end up with the UK. So Mr. Muhire, please.
Well, again, I want first of all to thank everyone to have organized such interesting debate. But maybe if you allow me to comment a little bit on how do we explain this so-called Rwandan expert? The youth, or even us as Rwandans, we need to understand this is not just because they hate us or they love us. There is a sort of political fight or war that is happening between the West and other rest of the continent. When they used to think the Western narrative was the only way to do things, today we have China, Russia, and other countries rising. So they have literally, and this is not sort of conspiracy theory, they have literally institution in charge to make sure the Western narratives still dominating the rest of the world narrative. If you go to France, you see what they call Département Afrique, Mr. Afrique, things like that. You go to the US, in their foreign affairs ministry, you have such people who definitely define themselves as experts, even they have never visited Africa or Rwanda. So we have to understand that is a political fight that is real, and there is a huge amount of money behind this fight. Those books that are being published everywhere, how do you explain that the so-called Judy River has such amount of money to travel everywhere to sponsor the trip, to literally focus, or as Anna say, to be obsessed by Rwanda? It takes money. We all lived in the Western world. We know we need to work in order to make a living. And I don't think her book is a bestseller to a point of making her easily traveling and getting access to the high table everywhere she goes. So something is behind that. We have to understand that. Now, how do we fight back? First of all, as I don't know who mentioned it here, that we need to move from being just passive to being active and prepare the fight before it even happened to us. I like the example they are doing in the US, where they have decided now to themselves now visit schools in their neighborhood, making sure they get engaged with their community, whatever kind of activity you're involved to. When it comes time to remember the genocide against the Tutsi in '94, we should make sure in community we're involved into, we connect with them, we explain, we ask them to listen to us. So it's very important to understand that. Otherwise, we will still always saying, why are they obsessed with us? What's wrong? And I will conclude with something that we should be aware of. I was blessed to be a CEO of a government organization called Rwanda Cooperation Initiative back in 2018 and 19. And the mission was to export homegrown solution from Rwanda. So if I can tell that we had around 200 to 250 study visits on a yearly basis from everywhere in the world, from as far as New York and as far as Vietnam or other kind of countries, who were coming to Rwanda to see how on earth have you managed to reconcile people? How do you keep your country so clean? How do you make sure you manage your so small budget and so have a tremendous results? And we have actually with that organization, they have started to export those homegrown solutions to other countries. So definitely those entity in charge of making sure the Western narrative should dominate and still the dominating narrative in the world. When they see Rwanda, for example, going to another country and having this country choosing the system of managing money, I mean, public money, public fund from Rwanda rather than from France or elsewhere, for them, it's a red flag. They would definitely invest in any wrong story, any wrong narrative to make sure Rwanda does not inspire other countries, whether being in Africa or elsewhere. So I wanted to underline that fact. We have to have this. I'm very happy to hear some of here are doing some political studies. We have to have this maturity of understanding that we are not an island. We are a country that is part of the world, and there's a real fight between narratives. And whenever you're trying to become a good example to follow, someone is going to be jealous, and he will do whatever he has to do to fight you back. So once you understand that, in my case, when I understood that, I definitely quit my paid job in Canada, well-paid job in Canada for Rwanda, because I finally said I have finally found a country that makes me feel as a citizen or alive in this world. And whatever challenge I face in Rwanda, whatever they so-called we are not developed yet as in the Western world, for me is actually an opportunity that is there to be grabbed, and that is there to be modeled to the African model, not to the Western model. So we have to have that confidence, that love, but also that political maturity. Otherwise, I will always say, why are they obsessed with us? They are going to produce Netflix movie. They're going to produce we've seen Hollywood movies. They are going to keep pushing. Today, when you search on YouTube, you put Rwanda. Why do we have more fake news when our media are producing more content than what the fake news people are producing there? So we need to be aware of that. So yeah, I want us to have a political maturity, and as I used to when I discuss with the people who liberate us, they tell us, Muhire, we fought the hardest part, which was a bullet fight. But it's now your turn to fight the narrative fight. It won't be easy. It will require us to be disciplined, very systematic, at the same time being on active level, not on the defensive level. So I will finish with that. Again, I thank you for inviting me.
Arakoze Muhire. Now I'll come back to Miss Joy, please.
Thank you, Kusa. Well, ending, I would say that the truth is that those who are denying or giving false information about our history really invest in it. Therefore, we also need to invest in writing our own history and facts and publish those books. Let us also invest in using the different platforms that are used for the wrong propagandas, and use those libraries: Netflix, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, IG, the different social media that we use as the youth to spread the truth and facts about our country. And let our schools have our own history books written by us Rwandans who know better than anyone else our own history, who lived it. So that way, the youth are taught from a young age the reality and truth about their nation. I would say that as a reminder, us, the youth, we're the future of our country. We should start by educating ourselves about the true history and reality of our nation. And also remember that we were broken by the colonial system of divide and rule. Therefore, to succeed, we need to all unite as Rwandans, have the same vision, and work together as one nation. Thank you.
Arakoze Dukuze Joy. Next, I'll have Ms. Muniza, please.
I just want to say thank you all for sharing your views and your methods. I think, I'll keep it brief, but, I just think that, the way I told you guys in this discussion how, at my university, in my politics and international relations degree, there was a unit where they taught, they teach about history, Rwandan history, and give the fake facts, the fake narratives. And I think, it's my responsibility, it's everyone's responsibility to go to these institutions that they're, spreading the fake facts, becoming a student there, becoming a professor there, or becoming even just a visitor there, and just using our voice and our real facts to educate everyone there. We just have to be brave, and we have to be louder. If they get louder, we get louder. We have to be confident in what we are saying. We have to do our research as well. Even when we're telling them to do their research, we have to continue doing our own research. We have to make sure that what we are saying is right, so that, we have so much more to give and so much more to educate. And also, it's also just about being brave. You just have to be brave. The same way our men and women fought for our freedom, and they were brave, and people lost their lives on the way. We also have to be brave in what we are saying too, and how we come across and how we assert ourselves, and educate our friends. There are people who we may be friends with who have other views, other opinions. We also have to educate them as well. So yeah, that's my method.
Arakoze Mwiza. Ms. Uwase, please.
Honestly, I think everyone's covered everything. I just think this has been such an honor, and it's just it goes to show that discussions such as these are the ones that we need to have, and platforms such as these are so important for us to talk and learn and grow. And I think one key thing is to keep encouraging the youth as well to put the effort into learning about their past and their history and their home, and just continue to encourage them to put their work into growing themselves. And from what I'm seeing with our generation and the ones who are younger, the ones who are just below us, they're doing such a great job already. And I just want to thank them for the work they put into educating others, because I know this is not an easy thing. I think uh, these days it's almost like everyone's an activist, everyone stands for something, everyone has something to say, even though we're really not all activists. But I think it's so important that you know where you stand in life, and you know what you believe in, and you know what you stand for. And like, I think someone mentioned, it's so important that we love our country and stand for our country. And I think that's one of the most important things in life. When you know where home is and when you stand for home, it's such a character build, and it's such a pivotal moment for you as a human being. So I think for we need all need to continue to encourage the youth and the younger kids in the community as well to do research into our history as a Rwandan people, and our history as just our political history as well, because politics affects us all, whether we're young, whether we're old, regardless of where we live, it affects us all. So we just need to continue to encourage each other to put the work into growing ourselves as a community. So yeah, thank you very much.
Arakoze Wase. Last but not least, Miss Anais, please.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have already shared what I would say, but I think I just wanted to reiterate some of those points. So, especially in this age of social media, whilst we're in the middle of a pandemic, or parallelogram for those of us who don't use the word pandemic, in the age of social media and the internet, the dissemination of information obviously is lightning fast, and so there's benefits because news that would not normally be reported actually gets reported. So genocides can't happen in secret. Murderers are, spotlighted. Justice is served, and people are held accountable. But the dark side, obviously, is there's a lot of misinformation, and unfortunately for us, there are a lot of competing voices. For some strange reason, there's this fantastic fixation on Rwanda, and they're trying to vie for our attention or share different ideologies, and so it makes it really difficult to be heard above the noise. But like Evie said, we need to be louder, especially with how fast things go viral online. I read recently somewhere, it was very crazy actually. Let me see if I can find the statistic. It was something like in America, there was a survey conducted last year by the Conference on Jewish Material Claims Against Germany, and included 1,000 millennials and Gen Zs between the age of 18 and 39 from all 50 American states. And it was something like 2/3 of respondents didn't actually even know that 6 million Jews were killed during the Holocaust. Nearly half couldn't name a single concentration camp, and 11% believed Jews caused the Holocaust, and 12% said they'd never even heard the word Holocaust before. So we can't have that happen, especially when you've got something like France only just admitting their part in the genocide, despite the fact that information about Operation Turquoise was readily available online. And so, like Mabel said, we have to challenge the narrative that white is right, and that the Western narrative is correct. And there's this weird, pervasive belief, and I've heard many people say it, that we could not have voted for our president day in, day out. It must be rigged because they're using their countries as a baseline. So we have really, we don't have a massively high voter turnout in the UK, but obviously in Rwanda, I think the last election, there was something like 93% showed up to vote. So they've decided, oh, but we don't have that in the West, so you must have rigged your elections. That's not true. So as long as we have these competing narratives, we are going to have a problem. So our call to action, or I feel like our focus should be like what Evie said, that we need to learn our history, but also learn our present. So I often say Google is free, but unfortunately for us, that's really, really hard with all the incorrect information that you find on Google, especially when you consider the fact that a lot of that content, we're fighting now not just people, but we're actually fighting algorithms. And one of my favorite things to teach about is how artificial intelligence is racist. Come find me, I'll explain exactly why. But that's a story for another day. And so I feel like we should be proactive in our world. And so I actually work for Apple, and I got the opportunity to share company-wide about Rwanda. So how can you do that in your world? Where can you have the stories? Where can you speak like Joy is doing at uni? But our actual Rwanda, not the warped view that mainstream media has concocted. Use your social media. Like we have so many platforms. There's TikTok, little things everywhere, so that we can bring awareness in creative ways. It doesn't have to be, just in a classroom. Maybe find another way that you do it, the way that you do it best. Maybe it could be through song, it could be through a short film, and of course share the content we're already producing, like Muhire said, because it's not one size fits all. We don't have to all produce it the same way, but already if we're seeing what's happening with the podcast for Amateke, then I think there's so many ways that we can do this, but we have to know our history so well that we can actually come against that information, because until we have facts, it's just going to be hearsay against somebody else's hearsay. So yeah, so I think that's probably the easiest way. It sounds easy, but I think we can do it. Especially there's 12 million Rwandans in Rwanda, and then there's even more outside. We've got this. We can totally do this.
Arakoze Anais, mwese murakoze. It's been really quite a stimulating hour and some minutes. Again, as you know, in no way we can give justice to such a topic that is close to home and it's very complex. But again, that was a time for us to reflect, a time for us to invite others to do more research, and time as well for us to create a safe space where we feel that we can exchange thoughts. But I really invite all of us that were listening and all of us that were exchanging here to obviously do more. The thing doesn't stop here, but as well, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for taking the time to come and exchange here, be vulnerable in front of an attentive audience. I want to thank as well the audience. We were looking at some of the comments on YouTube. That's really humbling that all of you are sharing the precious thoughts that you have with us, and you know that this is a series, so it's not going to stop here. We really believe in giving a voice to our diaspora. As you know, oftentimes our voice is not heard in such spheres that we all are exposed or not exposed to. So we always think that no one better than Rwandans can talk about Rwanda, and no one better than our communities in respective countries across the globe can honor that, because we have that duality of, we know how the country we call home, away from home, operates, and we know as well how our country of origin as well operates. So we are, I think, the best, in a way, ambassadors of those two coexisting cultures. A couple of things to wrap up here. As you know, we're in a pandemic, but we all, I think there was a common theme of how there's also an infodemic, and how people just bombard you with other alternative facts, and it's quite overwhelming sometimes. But as a lot of you said, they're not stopping, they're getting louder, so we have to match their energy, if not surpass. And as you know, only the truth shall set us free. The other thing is an invitation. Again, we can be coercive, we can be sometimes almost aroused. So in a way, we want to be to match their hostile energy, but you always want to remember that invitation to tell someone, hey, just go visit Rwanda, just go check it out yourself. You're saying a lot of things, you go check it out and you see how it is. And a lot of times, Tembere Rwanda, Gwinurebe, a lot of people have done a 180-degree turn after being like, oh my God, I went and I just saw humans. I saw a very well-organized country. It's not what I used to read. It's not what I used to hear. It's not what I used to see on some YouTube channels. So again, remembering, despite the fight the noble fight we're leading, keeping as well that ancestral Rwandan hospitality. Murakaza neza, muze murisanga muri iwanyu. It's always reminding them this. Being alert and being aware that we're against, I love what Mr. Muhire and all of you as well echoed on how this is intentionally done. To release a book during Kwibuka, it's intentional. To release a show, a documentary in that time, to not acknowledge the 1994 Tutsi genocide is intentional. To teach in school some very questionable facts is intentional. So to always be on our guard, always be alert and proactive. That there is a Western colonial lens still dominating. There is somewhat of a superiority complex still a thing. So to stay alert and to know, but to never, always remember the central role that the youth played in liberating Rwanda, the central role that the youth played in building Rwanda, and the central role that now the youth has to play in picking up the baton to keep that momentum, to keep propelling Rwanda at the higher spheres, higher altitudes that we all aspire to be, and we all deserve as well to be. All of this obviously honoring Agaciro and honoring umuco gakondo twese dukunda. But with that honesty, I thank you to all of you panelists because you haven't decided to be on the forefront of such, again, sensitive topics, but you are. So really thanking you for this. It's something we've inherited and we're proud to walk and talk with people whenever they want, but always remembering to take care of yourself, because one thing that we couldn't maybe touch on is mental health is a real thing. And as you know, with this pandemic that happened, a lot of us were isolated. And as well in Rwanda, usually in Kwibuka, a lot of people, the mental health is at its most sensitive moment. So please, please, remembering to take care of the beautiful human being you see in the mirror every day. And with that, by taking care of yourself, you're going to be able to take care of your community. And by taking care of your community, Rwanda is going to benefit. So with that, on behalf of Muhumuza Simeon from One Nation Radio and Chusanwari from the Rwandan community in the US, I want to thank you. I want to say stay tuned for our next talk show. And again, please remember to click on our One Nation Radio YouTube channel, follow us. And if you have any other topic you would like us to talk about, never hesitate to comment, reach out to us, as we're always trying to make sure we give this platform to our Rwandan diaspora. Murakoze cyane, Imana y'u Rwanda ikomeze kubarinda, and hopefully twese tuzahorana mu Rwanda ejo hazaza